keynote session during this year's Information Security Awareness Month. We are really in the last week of the event, but it's all packed with really great speeches and inspiring stories behind this. So during this session, Matthew Griffin, our keynote speaker, will walk us through the current and emerging cyber, meta, and physical security threats. Matthew's advisor behind the advisor is a world-class futurist and strategist, helping large organizations to stay secure and think differently on security. So he's recognized as one of the most foremost innovators and strategy experts, helps governments, helps investors, multinationals, and regulators around the world. And today, Matthew is here with us to inspire us on how we can better defend ABB, how we can build the resiliency of the company, and especially defending finance. So Matthew, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. That's it. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. That's it. And so my name is Matthew Griffin. Obviously, I'm a futurist. But I suppose, basically, while a lot of people actually know me as a futurist, my background is actually in cybersecurity and SIG-INT. So in a previous life, I actually headed up IBM's PSNS business, which is the Public Safety National Security business. And this is where inevitably, basically, we look after organizations like GCHQ, the NSA, the CIA, those sort of what we call Five Eyes organizations. And when we actually have a look at some of the things that people are subjected to at a nation-state level, increasingly what we're seeing is the tools that are being used by the nation-states to attack one another are increasingly being redirected, honed, tuned, and all those kinds of things, and actually redirected both at businesses but also at civilians. So during this particular presentation, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking you on a sort of a high-level journey of cybersecurity, physical security, and some of the trends that we're actually seeing, basically, should we say, in the security space. But then I'm going to bring it all the way down to the ground and actually not only show you some of the threats, basically, that you are going to be subjected to, but are also currently being subjected to, and then the things that you can actually do to protect yourselves. That's it, because everything starts with you. Now, let me ask you this question. If you suspected something was going wrong within your organization, whether it's you're under attack, there is some odd behavior, there are some just suspicious activities going on, who would you contact? Because if you're looking at this slide and your answer is, I don't know, that is your very first problem, both as an individual, but also as an organization. Because inevitably, it's down to each one of us to see the things that are happening around us and kind of make a judgment call on whether these are actually normal, expected behaviors. Now, when we have a look at the CFO, for example, 35% of all CFOs now see cybersecurity as being a top priority. Part of the reason for this is because cybersecurity and being hacked has an impact not only on your brand reputation, but also on your financial P&L, your share prices, and all kinds of other things. So cybersecurity is an increasing worry, basically, for a lot of CFOs. Now, 60% of CFOs are actually actively involved in cybersecurity with their CISOs, their CIO, CTO teams. That's it, which is a huge improvement from 5 years ago. But this is the kind of stat I like. 85% of CFOs are highly confident that their cybersecurity measures and practices are actually up to date and that their organization is secure. Now, when we were dealing with national security, we said, you are confident right up until the point at which you aren't. So when we talk about 85% of CFOs being highly confident that their organization is well protected, I would advise you to do this. Google and pick up the phone to an organization that does penetration testing. Get them in, at that point you'll be 0% confident. So that's why I think that's an interesting statistic. Now, when we actually have a look at cybercrime and the general serious organised crime groups, according to local tax records, the information that we're able to gather on these different groups and bodies, we've seen a $400 billion increase in the revenues that serious organised crime groups get from cybercrime. Now, cybercrime does include things like ransomware and so on and so forth, but this is a massive uptick. So the one message that is coming out of serious organised crime, as well as general crime groups, is cybercrime, that's big bucks. But that actually only represents quite a small percentage of the overall total, which is $6 trillion worth of revenue that's generated by serious organised crime groups around the world, and that's growing at about 19% year on year. So it's inevitably a question of when you are going to be attacked rather than if. Now, just to put this into perspective, some of the organisations, particularly as a large global business at the forefront of its industry, as ABB, you'll be going up against lone hackers. However, you'll also be going up against some organizations with serious heft. So, for example, when we actually have a look at Hydra, the Hydra group on the dark web, it's estimated their revenues are $45 billion, which puts them at number 67 on the Fortune 500. This is kind of the equivalent of having an organized crime group go after you that actually has the breadth and resources of a major Fortune 100 multinational. Imagine that. So I'm putting this into perspective for you on purpose. Now, during the 2008 recession, it was estimated by the Italian government that the mafia was Europe's most well-capitalized bank, with over $248 billion of cash, putting them at number 5 in the Fortune 25. So when we start thinking about some of the organizations and adversaries, if I can say that, adversaries that you are coming up against, these are serious players, and therefore you need to be serious as well. Now, I'm going to put this one in here. So this is a little bit early, but when we talk about ransomware, it used to be the case that individual attackers basically would go after a business. Now they're going after cities. Now we're actually starting to see ransomware affect entire countries like South Africa recently. But as we look into the future of ransomware, nothing is really off limits. We can actually see a time where ransomware is used on implanted medical devices to actually hold people's lives hostage, let alone anything else. Now, ransomware at the moment is actually taking a back seat during the war on Ukraine for the simple reason that the cybercrime groups that conduct a lot of the ransomware activity normally rely on insurance companies to pay out. So you get compromised, you pay up, and you claim from your insurance company. But the problem that now is this. Quite a lot of insurance companies, large global insurance companies, are now no longer insuring organizations against what they see as state-sponsored ransomware attacks. To quote them, it is largely uninsurable. Now, as a financial risk, this is terrible, let's face it. And there's lots of stories about that. So this is quite a worrying trend that we actually see in the cyberspace. Now, as a primer, I'm going to go through some of the actors that you're actually up against, just again to put some flavor on this and just to put some depth into it. So the criminals that you are going to be up against, the criminals who are targeting you or your business, or even not, and I'll explain that in a moment, they're generally going to be after data, they're generally going to be after IP, some of them are after money, and some of them are just after thrills. But generally, about 95+% of criminals that are actually coming after you or not, and I will explain that in a moment, are generally after your data, intellectual property, or money, or all three. So this is the stuff that you protect. This is your crown jewels. Now, when we talk about attacker types, you're obviously going to be targeted as well as not targeted by individuals, serious organized crime groups. Depending on the organization, bearing in mind you're a high-tech organization, one of the highest tech organizations really in the world, you could find yourselves basically being subjected to state-sponsored attacks. But when we actually have a look at entities like Russia, typically we have something called ALB, arm's length body attacks. So this is plausible deniability. So this is where, for example, the US government will say Russia conducted a cyber attack on critical national infrastructure. And Russia, or the state in question, says, we didn't do it, we have no idea who did it, while all the time just giving people a pass. So for example, with a lot of the ransomware groups, they actually set their language settings to avoid systems that have Russian languages set. So if a piece of ransomware detects that you are using a Russian keyboard and you are typing in Russian, it won't attack you. Okay, so these are some of the things to think about. Now, when I say you're targeted, but also you're not, what we actually see is about 75% of attacks overall are not targeted. You just happened to click on a phishing email and it wasn't targeted at you. It was part of 100 million emails that were just sent out on the off chance that one person would click something that they shouldn't. So the vast majority of attacks that you're going to be subjected to are kind of accidental. I didn't mean to target you, but you got onto my list somehow and now you're in my net. It's the targeted attacks, basically, that are the most dangerous, because this is really where organized crime groups and criminals spend a lot of their time doing things like social engineering, and I will come on to that. Now, another reality in the cybercrime space is that the cost of attacking you is dropping fast. Now, as a complete novice, if I decided that I wanted to attack ABB, I could actually do it really, really cheaply. And I'll show you, which means basically that we're in this world of, to attack you doesn't cost me very much money. The likelihood that you're going to catch me is really low because attribution is very difficult in cyber. But it could be high reward. So for example, if you are subject to a ransomware attack as the kind of company that you are, I'd be looking to try to extort tens of millions of dollars from you. So low cost, low risk, high reward, and I'm spending your money on a beach somewhere. Now, this is actually a current dark web price list. So notice basically the value that criminals put on different kinds of information. So if I wanted to buy your personal credit card details and I knew that you had a credit limit of over £5,000 that was free, that costs me $3. I'm going to go to logins next. To buy your login details for different services that you use, like Netflix and so on and so forth, that's $1. Malware, I can buy some quite fancy malware that I will now try to target you with for about $50. But notice where criminals are spending the money. It's $129 if someone can give me your email address and your password. This is your personal email address, your Gmail account, Hotmail account, Outlook account, so forth and so forth. Why? Because ultimately, a lot of your password resets are tied into your personal email address. But look at this next one. So as a criminal, I will pay typically between $150 to $1,500 for the email address and the password for your CEO or CFO's email. So look at this figure. Now, the reason for this is because if I get your CEO or CFO's email and I hack it, I can now send you in finance an email saying, hi, it's John here. Can you transfer a whole load of money to some random bank account? So when I say you have to look out for strange, out of character behaviors, even from people you think you can trust, always be on your guard. Now, if as a criminal I have a problem hacking you or getting into your company, we have help desks on the dark web. So just as you have an ICT help desk that you phone if you have problems, as a hacker, I have one as well. That's it. So that costs almost nothing, by the way, and often they'll take a percentage of the proceeds. They'll take 10% of however much money I get from your organization or from you. Now, when we have a look at future attacks, increasingly a lot of the attacks that you are going to be subjected to are going to be automatic, autonomous, and increasingly sophisticated. So this is something to be wary of, because at the moment we have a lot of humans hacking humans, humans targeting humans. But we are starting to get to the point where artificial intelligence is being weaponized and where AIs are now starting to target humans as well as machines and everything else. So this is a trend that we call robo hackers. Robo hackers have already been used in the wild as well as by the US Pentagon to hack systems 100 million times faster than any human hacker can. Just put that into perspective. I can scan the source code of your websites, your software. I can scan it within minutes. And I can exploit vulnerabilities, fix vulnerabilities within minutes. This is a dangerous trend. At what point do the insurance companies say, if you've been attacked by a weaponized artificial intelligence, we will not insure you? And when we actually have a look at some of the places to watch for some of the new exploits and attacks that are coming through, Africa is a really good place to watch. Because if I wanted to attack ABB, and I have a new exploit, a new toolkit, I'm probably not going to test it on you straight away. What I will do is I will find a similar company in Africa and I will go and attack them. And if I'm successful, then I'll come and attack you. So just as your own engineers and research and development teams do, with a lot of minimal viable products and product testing and prototyping and et cetera, criminals do this as well. So watch Africa for the latest exploits. Little tip there. Now, this is an interesting next topic. You aren't future-proof. In fact, from a cybersecurity perspective, it's the Wild West. So technology, especially emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, are a threat multiplier. So increasingly, technology multiplies the power of the individual to do more things, hack more people, generate more scam emails, and so on and so forth. And eventually we will go to full auto, which is where artificial intelligences will put the email that you're receiving together based on big data and social engineering paradigms. Everything is weaponizable. So everything's becoming more connected and digital, but you also have to remember that if you have a state-of-the-art data center that is protected to the 9th degree when it comes to cybersecurity, I could just drive a JCB through your data center. So I can weaponize everything, and you do have to really think about not just cybersecurity, but physical security as well. And in fact, little story here, some of the pen testers that I work with have actually been given the task of stealing CFO laptops from offices, and they've done it using behavioral engineering. Now, when we have a look at risk, increasingly, we're used to physical risk. So I could drive a bulldozer through your data center. Digital risk, I can attack you using cyber tools. But there's also virtual risk as well. So, for example, with organizations that are now starting to build out in the metaverse, so for example, if you think about your digital twin factory systems, which are inevitably going to become metaverse digital twins, I can do some interesting things. So you have to remember that as we start building more virtual reality kind of products, virtual products, the old rules that you use to protect your physical and digital assets and people generally no longer apply. So this is an area that I would encourage you to get your arms around, especially, as I say, bearing in mind that you're already embracing things like digital twins, which will no less move on to virtual reality-based twins and so on and so forth. Now, from an Office of Finance perspective, if you are making a payment, your ICT teams should be very aware of what we call rug pulls. So a rug pull is where you might be going to pay an organization using cryptocurrency. We have something called smart contracts. So a smart contract is a little piece of code. And when you make a payment, say for example to me, that little piece of code executes and it says, you owe Matt money because Matt did something. I do that, I provide proof of it, you pay me, the contract says, Matt's done it, we're going to pay. So increasingly, a lot of criminals are actually starting to look at hacking smart contracts. Now, what this means is you think you're paying me in cryptocurrency, and this is really crypto-led. You think you're paying me in cryptocurrency, you say, pay Matthew because he did a great job, except for the fact your smart contract has been hacked and my money goes somewhere else, to a criminal organization. So look out for rug pulls. Now, when you think about all of the sensitive information within your organization that is encrypted, and I know that you have a huge amount of information that's encrypted using probably 256-bit AES encryption, in about the year 2025, when quantum computers, which are some of the world's most powerful computers, actually achieve a particular size, I should be able to decrypt at least 70% of all of your encrypted information within a couple of minutes. That's right, I said minutes. I could also use these powerful machines to crack 4096-bit encryption in between 8 to 12 hours. So when we talk about your encrypted assets, how safe are they? Have you already moved to post-quantum cryptography? Maybe, but probably not. Who knows? Then we have polymorphic malware. Polymorphic malware, if you click that phishing link, which you really shouldn't have done, increasingly we have artificial intelligence-based malware that literally evolves like a chameleon. So at 1 minute it looks like this, and your cybersecurity detection systems can detect it and say that's malware. But a couple of seconds later, it's evolved its own code and it looks like something else. In which case, your cybersecurity systems don't know where it's gone. So this is also what we call adaptive malware. So when you think of malware as just being this rather dumb piece of code that you click on and it executes and it installs itself on your computer and across your networks, malware is literally evolving. And that creates a huge problem for your ICT teams. So stop clicking those links. And then when we have deepfakers, and I've got a little video here, synthetic content is increasingly being generated by the likes of artificial intelligence, but also artificial intelligence combined with humans. So this is where we can do biometric spoofing. I'll come on to that in a minute. Reputational damage. So I could create a deepfake or a piece of synthetic content of your CEO saying things that he shouldn't. For example, we've made a huge loss, everything's going wrong, why am I the CEO? And you could find your share price literally diving. We've seen that with Coca-Cola, we've seen it with Facebook. I can use it to crash your stock. So for example, I'll give you a slightly non-ABB example, but I could create a deepfake piece of content saying Joe Biden has moved the 7th Fleet off of the coast of North Korea. Now, if I pushed that out and people started virally sharing it, or the bots virally shared it, the quantitative traders, which are artificial intelligence share dealing systems, would send down the stock of Samsung almost instantly until people realized that the 7th Fleet wasn't actually off the coast of North Korea. At which point, as a criminal, I buy at the bottom, I sell at the top. Thank you for the billions. We've already seen this happen, by the way. And moreover, when we start seeing synthetic content really taking center stage, when it becomes very difficult to detect, and that's going to be the next couple of years, we have the end of trust. Because at what point at what point will you not believe that the video call that you're on, like this one here, isn't with your actual CFO? So increasingly, we have the ability to create deep content, particularly deep fake video calls like this, where I sound like me, I look like me, I move like me, I do hand gestures like me, but it's fake. So are you prepared for that? You are now, because you're listening to this. So thank you for listening. Now, when we look at biometric spoofing, increasingly I can use artificial intelligence to copy your voice, clone your voice really, clone your face, clone your iris, clone your fingerprints. I shouldn't do that because you could take a photo of my fingerprints and now you could start unlocking my stuff. That's actually a thing. So when we actually have a look at biometric spoofing, recently in China, somebody created deepfakes of a huge number of Chinese citizens that they then used. So these were facial deepfakes. They then used these facial deepfakes to access their social security records. And in this case, the criminal organization got away with $79 million because they had managed to clone people's faces, put those into a database, and get the Chinese government to pay out a huge amount of social security money. So in addition to this, we've already seen people clone the voices of CEOs. There was a famous example literally a couple of years ago, so this isn't new, where the CEO of a global energy firm phoned the CFO of the UK subsidiary and said, "Hi, John, I want you to transfer $250,000 to a Romanian bank account." Now, it was picked up by some interesting individuals, that's it, and these people in finance basically thought that's a bit odd, but the hackers persisted. And in the end, the finance team transferred well over $250,000 to a criminal organization in Romania, and the money disappeared. Now, Euler Hermes in that particular case actually paid out on the claim, so you can look this up. But do you trust the voices of the people that you are speaking to? And if your CFO suddenly said, "Hi, for no reason whatsoever, I'd like you to transfer a huge amount of money to some random bank account," you are your best line of defense. And things are not getting easier for you, I will agree with you there. That's it. But you have to be on your guard. You can never be complacent. And then when we have deepfakes, if you are looking to hire for a remote financial services position, where someone can work from home, the FBI have now picked these up. People are now starting to have video interviews like this one maybe that we're having here. I'd like to work for ABB because I'm a fantastic I'm fantastic. However, I'm a deepfake. So what we're actually seeing is we're seeing people try to use deepfakes to get jobs at companies, because once I've got a job with you, have you just given me access to your systems? I think you have. Thank you very much. So beware people who are conducting interviews with you using deepfake technology. At the minute, get them to turn sideways and you will see they're a deepfake. But in the next year or two, you won't be able to tell. So do you have a process to handle that? Can you prove that the person that you are talking to and trying to hire is actually a human who exists? We're talking randomness here, but this is already happening.
What can you tell us about your Project B and how it will help people get rich right now?
Today we are launching an investment project that is working right now if you see this video. Absolutely everyone can earn in it. Everything is very simple. You invest your money in Bitcoin. For TeslaTreeBot.net is our bot, after which everyone who invested their cryptocurrency will be able to receive exactly 30% of dividends every day from the invested amount.
How long will it take for dividends to arrive?
I'm sure that from 3 months.
Is the number of seats unlimited?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's Elon Musk, who was actually at an ARK Invest conference. That's criminals using the video from that conference to create a deep fake of him and the interviewer there, the host, to actually get Elon Musk to sell a crypto scam, and that actually lost people tens of millions of dollars. So you really have to be careful when you are authenticating content. You need to know who it's from, you need to be able to authenticate it, you need these systems in place. Because that could be an ABB video that I manipulate to get your executives or you to say whatever I want. And what would I do with that? Maybe I get you involved in a crypto scam. So beware deepfakes. It is one of the most dangerous of all cyber trends that we see. Now, from a physical security perspective, you have to be aware of a few things. So this is it's part of my own experience having traveled the world. I will show you what I mean by that. So firstly, keep your assets secure. I've already told you about the CFO whose pen testers stole his laptop. So keep your assets secure. Basic stuff. Extortion. Keep your documents secure. So we're seeing an uptick in the number of cyber criminals as well as physical criminals, basically, that are actually getting and stealing documents, but they're then using information within those documents to extort people within companies. So I've just found some dirt on you. Can you get me access to your system? Otherwise, I'm going to release it. Plain old, good extortion. Beware of what you share. Beware of what you put into documents. Beware of where you put your documents. Now, when we actually have a look at cables, now you wouldn't necessarily think that you could get malware from a USB cable, an optical cable, or anything else. But have you ever been to another country where they say, hey, just if you want to charge your phone, just plug your phone into this charging cable, and you think, that's great, why is it free? It's because it's uploading malware to your phone. Okay, so when you are abroad, or even when you're actually in your home country, only use your own cables. This is a hack that a lot of people do not see, but it's a really effective and vicious attack, and it gives me access to all of your stuff, both your personal stuff and your business stuff. So use your own cables when you're charging and connecting to networks and all that sort of stuff. Now, when we have a look at cyber, so this is sort of where we go through some of the cyber pieces, and then after this I will tell you how you now defend against these and the things that you can do as individuals, but also as a business, to make sure that you reduce the risk. Firstly, cyber criminals are very good at behavioral engineering. If you think anything is out of character, it just looks odd, it's weird, report it. Because it probably is odd. So here, trust your instinct. This is very important. You're looking for things that don't fit. Now, data brokers. No doubt your marketing team uses a lot of data brokers. Now, data brokers are legitimate organizations that collect huge amounts of information on you. Who you are, your name, your email address, where you kind of live, the things that you do, the title that you hold in the company that you work for, and all these sorts of things. Now, I would actually advise you to have a conversation with a lot of the data brokers out there, because what we've actually seen is a lot of data brokers are not only selling the email address of your CFO, along with his name, country, how long he might have been at the company and all these sorts of things, but also his IP address or her IP address. Once I have your IP address, I can attack you. So this is also really so useful for social engineering, because with a lot of these data brokers, a little bit like Facebook, they gather lots of information on you. So I know that he's into cat. I know that your CFO's into cats. So what I do is I send him a cat USB stick saying, hi, John, I know that you were at the Samsung event a little while ago, and I noticed that you love Pomeranians and cats. And so, I've given you this mouse or this USB stick. That's it. Social engineering. That's it. It's not to be underestimated. So On this one, when you are starting to put information about yourself in the wild, mix it up. That's it. So for example, basically when I'm filling in forms, sometimes I'm Mr., sometimes I'm Doctor, sometimes I'm Mrs. My date of birth changes, all kinds of different things. That's it. So be careful of what you share online and be careful of the data brokers, because these are public lists that I can buy that include a list of all your executives as well as you as individuals. And then vet the data brokers. See if you can actually find what information's out there and then get it removed. Now, data poisoning is something that you might not necessarily think of as a threat. However, when we have a look at data poisoning, sometimes I don't need to hack you, or sometimes I don't necessarily need to hack you or extort money from you. What happens if I just change one digit on a bank account number? What happens if I just add 2 zeros to that transaction? What happens if I change the name of Samsung PLC to Samsung PLC with 2 A's, and I now set up a new supplier account on your system for a completely different Samsung? I'm picking on Samsung, but they don't mind. They're a good customer. So be careful of data poisoning. Now, this is actually where what criminals are doing is they're altering data, and sometimes it's just a minor edit in order to do something. They're up to no good. So when you're looking at your data sets, if something looks odd, call it out. Validate your data. If your data looks like it's changed, call it out. But also validate your data sources, because a lot of the data that you'll actually be ingesting as a company might never have actually been validated, and actually it could be, should we say, I wasn't going to say junk, that's going to be a little bit mean, but it could be dubious. So data poisoning. Now, when we start having a look at the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, as well as data scientists, to crunch through all of this data to come to a conclusion. So for example, if you want to move into a new market as a company, you'll bring in lots of data, you'll analyze it, and then eventually you'll come to a decision. So when we look at the future of decision-making systems, if I have compromised your data sets, I could get you to invest in the wrong company, buy the wrong company, move into the wrong markets, use the wrong suppliers, use suppliers basically with a poor ESG rating, because I've mucked about with your data. So this is where, when we look at data poisoning combined basically with machine analytics and all that sort of stuff, data science, there's quite a lot of mayhem going on there. Now, in terms of data in the wild, this should be a basic. We try to teach our children this. If you shouldn't be sharing information about something, don't share it. As easy as that. If that information is confidential, if it is sensitive, do not share it anywhere. But if it's compromising, don't share it anywhere either. So when we have a look at banks, for example, some banks basically will go, I've been looking at some robotic stocks recently, and because they've put that information out there, other investors have gone, well, why don't we invest in some robotics companies? Now, that's been taken as insider trading. So be really careful about the data you share. If you wouldn't want me to see whatever it is that you've shared, or your bosses or your competitors and so on and so forth, do not share it. Basic information 101. Details matter. So the reason for this is emails, for example. We know this, emails and bank details. So if I was going to email you from Microsoft.com, but all of a sudden my domain is MSFT.com or Microsoft with a 5.com or something like that, this is where you might look at these emails, think it's from, say, a company like Microsoft, click the link in it, and now you're infected with malware. But also check things like bank details. So always check the details. If something does not look right, if, for example, you get an email from ab-b.org, that's probably someone up to no good, because that's not your own domain name. So zero trust. Do not trust anyone or anything. When we have a look at phishing, increasingly, basically, if you are being targeted by criminals, this is where I will see that you have a particular research and development opening available. I will craft a specific CV for that position. I will then put malware into that CV, send it to your HR team. They look at this CV, go, that's perfect. We are literally looking for this guy. He's the world's top expert in robotics. And then they will start clicking some links. Now I'm in your system. Okay? So when we talk about spear phishing, it's different to regular email scams because I am actually after you. And when we talk about scam CVs, we've actually seen scam CVs appear for organizations that are building nuclear power plants. You can imagine what the criminals are up to there. Scam emails, scam websites. Another favorite of serious organized crime groups is things like the deck appeal. So, for example, the war in Ukraine. So inevitably you'll start seeing emails coming through saying, support Ukraine by donating money via this website. Increasingly, a lot of cyber criminals are actually creating thousands of fake sites so that when you donate to Ukraine, you're actually donating to a criminal organization. So when we talk about spear phishing, we're not just talking about things like emails, which you'll be familiar with. We're talking CVs, other documents, websites and domains. So again, adopt a posture of zero trust. Do not trust anything. If you are suspicious about something, do not do whatever you are going to do. Slackers. Now, if you use direct messaging or instant messaging, whether it's with Microsoft Teams or whether it's, say, Slack from Salesforce, sometimes you have to be aware, basically, that sometimes the criminals are already in your company. So one of the popular things that criminals are doing at the moment is they will go into a Slack channel and they'll say, hi, Sandra, just noticed that you've just logged back in again. We think that your password has been compromised. Click this link here to reset your corporate password. Except it's a phishing link, but now it's in your corporate communication system. So again, you have to be alert because you wouldn't necessarily think that someone is already within your Slack channel. That's it. So phishing from within, this is known as. Now, mergers and acquisitions. So one of my clients is KPMG, and they recently told me this story of a piece of M&A that they were working on, and the merger was just about to go through. But at the very last minute, somebody on the phone call, so it was a conference call, said, hi, just to let you know, we've changed our bank details. So can you actually transfer the money into this bank, not the other bank that we gave you, during the start of the process? Somebody in the Office of Finance actually flagged it and said, that's really weird. They caught it. The payment didn't go through. So when you're putting together mergers, or if you put together mergers and acquisitions, firstly, the fact that you are putting data together alerts criminals and competitors to the fact that you're doing something, whatever that is. You're looking to buy a company or merge. So be careful how you put the data together. But secondly, you need to validate and vet everybody within those bid teams on a continual basis because we are seeing more mergers and acquisitions teams being compromised. Again, be on your guard. When we start talking about human hacks, I'm just going to try and do some social engineering of you. I really like you. That's it. It's really great that we're having this wonderful conversation. I'd like to get to know you better. And as I get to know you better via social engineering, could you just share me your password? So this was actually done by Edward Snowden. He actually got other people in his own organization within the NSA. That's a comedy. So Edward Snowden actually got other people within the NSA to share their passwords with him. We all know what happened with Edward Snowden. And once I have your passwords and login credentials and everything else, I can spread malware and I'm in your system. Now, We have to be wary of partners as well. So supply chain attacks are on the rise. This was actually the colonial attack. So the colonial attack, which took down the whole US Eastern Seaboard's gas pipelines, was actually a supply chain attack. So you generally trust your suppliers. You shouldn't, by the way. Zero trust. Trust no one, trust nothing. Not even your best supplier called Fred. Because inevitably, increasingly, we can see suppliers being compromised, and then once your supplier is compromised, then you start being compromised as well. So just be wary of your suppliers. If they do odd things, again, something seems out of place, et cetera, et cetera. The number of transactions going through to a particular supplier seem really high, based on averages. So this is where we look at machine learning for pattern recognition. Then that's probably going to be something to be aware of and flag up. So just be aware of supply chain attacks. Wi-Fi, and we're almost there. I'm going to get to the things you can do soon. When we have a look at Wi-Fi, do you ever go to the Starbucks cafe and log on to the Wi-Fi? Fantastic, great for you. Do you use VPN? If not, you should. But secondly, what happens basically if you log into a network that you think is the Starbucks Wi-Fi network, but it's actually mine? They're easy to set up. In fact, I'm using one right now that I could call anything. I could call this little device here. I could call it anything. I could call it the ABB guest access point, and then put it near your reception, and suddenly everyone's sharing their credentials with me, and I've now hacked you. So only log into Wi-Fi networks that you trust, and if you don't trust them and you can't avoid using them, use VPNs. VPNs won't protect you against everything, but they do a fairly decent job. And then when we start talking about minimizing risk, these are the things that you can do to minimize your own risk, but also the risk to your organization. First, education is your best defense. That's what we're doing right now. This is being recorded, so you can have a look at this. You can get your head around basically the different ways that you might be attacked. Educate yourselves. Second, eliminate passwords. This is more for the ICT team. Eliminate passwords now, and at a personal level and a corporate level, enable two-factor authentication everywhere. In fact, even as we speak, I know for a fact that my website is attempting to be hacked. And I have actually a bunch of people who are literally trying to break into my websites. The reason I see that is because I'm getting all the analytics off it and everything else. But I have 2FA enabled, so they might get my password, but unless they clone my phone, they're not going to be able to get that. Zero trust. Trust no one, trust nothing. Golden rule in today's world. Number 4, be prepared. At some point, it is likely that you'll be subjected, directly or indirectly, to an attack. More than likely, an email-based one. Do not become complacent. When you become complacent and you think, this is probably okay, I'm not going to bother checking this phishing link today, I'm just going to click it, that's when you get hacked. You cannot become complacent. You need a culture of trust. Now, this is an organizational thing. If there is something that you don't trust, you need to be able to tell someone. But if you've also done something that you shouldn't, because my social engineering was fantastic, thank you for sharing your passwords, you need to be able to go back within your organization and say, and fess up and say, I think I've done something that I shouldn't have. I've shared information that I shouldn't have. I'm letting you as a company know I've messed up. Now, from ABB's case, you need a culture of trust that lets people tell you that they've done dumb things and you cannot tell them off for it. And you say, well, you should know better and everything else, and then educate them, but do not tell them off. Because otherwise, I'm just not going to tell you that I just shared all the company's financial data basically with a competitor by accident. Tip 6, know your information, know your people, know your processes. Hi, My name's Mike. I'm new in finance. I'm working out of Singapore. I was wondering if you could share a whole variety of sensitive financial information with me via my ABB account, because I just hacked one of your executives over there. Know your information, know your people, know your processes, because this will help you figure out the things that don't look right. And then always test. This is again an organizational thing. The most valuable thing that you can do as an organization is go and find some penetration testers, physical and cyber penetration testers, and say, come in and hack us. You will be amazed at what they can do. And then that confidence might fall a bit. And that's it from me. So if you'd like to click any of the links, especially on this particular site, I'd love it. Hopefully it won't take you to a piece of malware and give me access to your system. My name's Matthew Griffin, and I'm your best frenemy.